Dobry wieczór, everybody. Get yourself set up and relaxed with us for a Sunday evening. And Sean will be here in just a moment. I'm actually here in Mykolaiv, and we have our people are sort of rounding up for the evening. I just gave you a little bit of a live thing. Hold on. We have music play. Is it in my phone? That's really weird. Bear with me 1 minute. Oh, no, it's outside here. Okay, playing back through my phone. So, Dobry wieczór from Mykolaiv, actually, in this case today. And see if I can't get the tablet going here for you guys so I can see your comments. Sean will join us here in a minute. And what do we have? Cool. Very busy couple of days traveling around. Was in Dnipro yesterday when Sean was arriving, and now we're in Mykolaiv. We're supposed to be, if you didn't catch the other day, we're supposed to be in Kherson a couple of days ago. But unfortunately, the van, by the way, if y'all haven't noticed, I have chosen a very specific set for your defenders. I love this sign. I don't like that we have to have this sign, but it speaks so well. So that's our presentation for tonight. Have a good evening. No, just kidding. We're just starting. Let's see. Yulia Kalashnik is here. Moja podruga. Dobry wieczór. Ja думаю про тебе. Я знаю, це ситуація дуже страшна. Yeah, we had a lot of missiles last night for those who did not see. And Sean will be here to talk a little bit about what we've been seeing with me and also what's been happening to the Russian side. And if everything is okay, we'll be fine for a good little broadcast here to catch up with what's going on before I go back and get things done. I will also say that it's been a bit of an honor to have young people show their political courage right in front of me. You know, it's an hour supply directly into the phone. Better to do it now. There we go. Oh, I can even sit the power bank directly on the ground, and I do not have to worry about it now. Never forget that they completely fucked up Zhebruk. Why do I say this? Because the taste is still good, and I happen to have a flavor for the pears flavors. So, few new patches. My General Cherry patch, much like my General Cherry shirt. Number two, tonight you have special invitation. You have my special forces guys, Moskvi Pichote. Our this is very rare, by the way, and Tempest Fugit, of course, a Predator patch. But more important is I want to remind that thanks the other day to our wonderful friend who stopped by to make sure that our van was working. In the meantime, I'll have me a patch to put on, or chevron, as we sometimes say, but patch to put in the collection. And I told a friend of mine I don't buy them. I can only get those that I authentically am handed, like Fryazov. Just like we have over here, right? Fryazov. So there's that. But also the stop Huilo, okay, and of course Fryazov. Did you forget where we were right now? Okay, stop Huilo, and don't forget Azov. Don't forget how to free Azov. Two colors, no less. Thanks to Yarek the Ukrainian, for our uh, presentation on that. Actually, I'm trying to find something, to be honest with you. I just want to make sure everything is set up. So when Sean is here, we's good to go. Love driving across the country. You saw this earlier tonight. or I guess morning for you, the sunflowers, the fields and fields of yellow, or as Sting would sing, the fields of gold. Yeah. Yep. And then we went and crawled around inside them without trying to create a problem for a farmer. We actually, I was even asking questions like, do they shoot you if you just take one of these big, lovely flowers? Just one, just one. You're not trying to take the whole bunch. You're not trying to take a bundle. In fact, I know people who try to sell them, so like that would be a real big bad thing to be doing. Um, right, sure. Tonight's drink is no longer Coca-Cola for now, but Shabrook because they fucked up the labeling. Yulia understands where I'm going. Yulia, tell everyone, do we agree? Our viewer, do we agree? They fucked up Shabrook. The taste is exactly the same, but they fucked up the brand because they changed it from our very like straightforward way of just seeing kind of like children's like Shabrook. Now I went this really generic like labeling. I've become so Ukrainian in a way that I laughed. I genuinely needed one of those days too. I genuinely laughed like extremely hard when this trend that's happening in language TikToks and Instagrams where they do like the what are the day types or whatever. But there was one that had uh, oh yes, I remember the angle. She's like, okay, you busted me. I'm not really Ukrainian. I'm American. And then she turns around and sees Shabrook and switches into like like extremely fast, very passionate Ukrainian. Like, yeah, I'm not really sure, like, yeah, it was funny. And I totally related to it because I was literally the funny part, and I wrote that account about this. Is the funny part is that I literally had just taken on my balcony, just taken a swig of Shipbrook and just kind of went because it's just like that. I have not finished posting my Pepsi article, but do not forget there's a reason why I say Pizdets Pepsi. Don't forget the word of the night, as always. Pizdets. Pizdets Российской Федерации. Pizdets Pepsi. Pizdets Trump. Pizdets Pete. Which basically means Pete's fucked. But Pepsi is making big fucking money with Russia. And that part of the thing I want to do right before I publish it is just double check my Coca-Cola numbers. Because I would really like to make sure that I'm not about to smack one company when I need to smack more than one company. So then we have this guy, Sean Penner. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Sean. Oh, wait. Okay, I have to stop talking about him now that he's here, and we'll say nice things from now on. But anyway, Brother Sean, you have been busy on the road. And Sean, I sent you the photo ahead of time. I'm going to adjust the frame just enough. Just
That's
enough.
cool.
Just free our defenders. So, and I told our audience earlier, tonight's program is brought to you not only by Jabruk, but by the effort to free Azov. Make sure we free our defenders and bring our defenders home. Shodomaya, brate, what you been doing?
You're stomping in my background. You're in Mykolaiv, aren't you?
No, I was just in your background. I was in Dnipro.
Well, no, I was based in
your park and all that stuff.
I was based in Mykolaiv for 2 years. I know it really well. I was celebrating when they opened the McDonald's there, actually. They recently opened the McDonald's there, and I was kind of celebrating that because it's taken a bit of a battering, old Mykolaiv.
Yes. Yes. Would you like me to actually I think our set is good here. But we have this large complex here, the administration building that was hit, a big hole blown out of the middle of it. And I think that as we go into the program a little bit, I could move over there very easily, and the audience can see what is sort of now a very sad landmark in our beautiful town of Mykolaiv, which is a whole center section of the town, this particular administration building, is completely blown out. And there's a lot of videos of this, including our wonderful defender, our Marine brother, 36 Marine brother, no less, Alexander Kiriyenko, who I may go see tomorrow. We're trying to work out our timing. The one who put Azalea Banks in her place with such grace and gratitude. Yeah, when you see that video, the building he's standing in front of is just basically sitting here right to my side. Whole middle section blown out from a missile attack years ago. But let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, let's talk about this escalation you and I have been talking about, because I got to quote our commentary earlier today. We're
Oh,
talking about escalation and how we're not surprised that we're not now waiting 2 weeks between big salvos. We're waiting 2 to 3 days between 30, 40 missile attacks. Last night was 41, according to the numbers from what I understood. But what do you think about that, man?
well, I think a lot of it's to do with the demonstrations. Obviously, Russia's going to capitalize on the political uncertainty in Kiev at the moment, and that's
Right.
largely self-inflicted by Zelensky. I think that's pretty much a given that they're going to try and add a layer to that. I can't say they were targeting the protesters or anything like that. But
Hmm.
certainly they would want to add a lot of pressure to Zelensky, and the way they could do that is obviously hitting Kiev when they did the weekend of the protests. So I think it's a lot quicker than usual. Something's not right with it. I can't say for certain, and I don't have any proof to say that
Right.
Russia's attacked, a little bit ahead of schedule because of the protests. But if I was Russia, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd want to, unsettle, not hit civilians, but, I'd want to hit military targets and
Hmm.
pile the pressure onto Zelensky. And I can only assume that's why they've done what they've done, like you said, a bit earlier than normal.
Well, because when we talked about, it was 4 weeks ago actually tonight. For no, 2 to 3 weeks ago, I said we had seen that they were roughly running at a 2 week pace for the large salvos, not the little
Yeah.
like they do sometimes where they throw four at us, they throw six at us. But when they throw that 20, 30, 40 missiles at us, it was taking roughly 2 weeks. I never said it was because of stock or some particular reason, just that that's when they tended to do it. The numbers back that up. And almost immediately after that was discussed, the frequency changed. Now we were at 4 or 5 days between those. So yeah,
Yeah, well,
and
you
it's
normally
actually
get,
yeah.
so you normally get, they can't hit everywhere all the time. And as we said before, they hit Kiev. Then you could bet your bottom dollar
Mhm.
4 or 5 days later they're coming to hit Dnipro. They're constantly hitting Kharkiv and those frontline cities. But
Yeah,
certainly, it's been pretty, compared to Kiev, it's been pretty quiet here, which tells you everything about their targeting. They're targeting Kiev.
right.
They're solely targeting Kiev, which means, it's pretty quiet here, and you know, that's the norm now. They don't really have any ideas, the Russians, apart from what they're doing already or trying to.
1 second. We have to do something real quick. Молодец. Я верю в тебе. Працюємо разом. Okay. Sorry, that was some of our leaders from our little protest a while ago, and if they're going to go by,
Yeah, I
especially
mean
the
those
young lady,
protests,
she was yeah,
they're across all the cities. They're across Ukraine at
right.
the moment. So
So I
it's
had to
not just,
pause for a
I don't think
moment in
it's
the
just
middle of our
Kiev.
presentation to tell one of the young people, "Well done, you did great, and I believe in you." Anyway, go ahead. That's from all of us, all of you watching and Sean. So here, go ahead.
Yeah, those protests across the country. So we've just seen one
Yeah,
today and yesterday in Dnipro and Kiev. There are many people who are unsettled. It's probably more anger now compared to the Nabu Sabu last summer, where we saw the protests on the streets there. This is far more volatile. I just did some interviews today with some people in Kiev, um, online, where they were talking about, we got rid of one czar. The exact quote was, "We got rid of one czar in the Maidan, and we've got now a president that seems to be doing, making czar-like decisions without telling anybody what's going on or including anybody." So there's a lot of anger here regarding the dismissal of Fedorov and how it's all gone about, and
how it was
how it's all
handled is a big
manifested.
deal. Yeah, how it's
Oh,
handled is
yeah,
a
it's
big deal.
massive. Yeah,
Let me explain.
personally, go on,
Yeah.
you go. We got to
No,
cross
I was going to
lines
at
here,
least
but
explain.
we'll
Yeah,
try and
no,
do that.
no. I was going to just mainly explain to some viewers who might not know who we're talking about, just to qualify, because we'll forget that sometimes. Um, Mikhailo Fedorov is the youngest minister of defense this country's ever had. He was in charge of the Ministry of Digital Transformation from the very first year until just a few months ago, until 6 months ago. And I met him I met him in the first year briefly, but it wasn't anything I would have built on. I wouldn't have even known to think about his placement yet at that time, you know. I'm an IT guy, so that was obvious. But when it came to like Sersky, that seemed like a whole nother world. And now, as we look 4 years on, last August into September, we were going to like Brave One Tech Forum for big drones, then going to the Brave One AI seminars that were talking about a range in which those things were evolving. The components event announcing that they were basically development contracts for those companies they could get to serious scale, workable scale, in component making that normally would shut down weapons development and other support development. And the beauty of it was like Brave One had the real good teams that could walk you and I through if we didn't know all this stuff and say, well, this company's leading that and this company's developing that. And they had it really down. And that seemed to me why, when all of a sudden they were going to get rid of the Minister of Defense, it's like Umarov, by the way, Crimean Tatar minister. We actually almost instinctually, because I just met him and talked to him a few times, went, you know, who's sort of the shoe in is the guy who really took on the drone development. And I don't mean simply FPVs, the whole concept of it at another level that was industrial, outside development, all of that at once, and it seemed logical. Now, the young people, both here today and in your town, I was blessed to be able to hit 2 events in 24 hours to get a southern perspective that I would not normally have. And I would add, ironically, a year ago, I was here when the Nabu and Sapu protests broke out in Kiev, and I'm all the way down in the south. So here I'm in South. I asked him, what do you think about the fact that the young people have made it clear and stood up for a minister of defense? Because you're British, I'm American. Do you remember the last time someone did that in London? No one's going to do it in Washington, D.C. And what I have heard up close is, let me say it this way: they won't say it of themselves, but it's the voices of the youth say, "This is who we believe in. This is the guy who's been winning our war. This is the guy who's been defending us. This is the guy who represents our generational development." So I think that's what's important, is to see how it represents the youth. You know,
Well,
the next generation that wants a better future.
I would agree to a certain point. I think this is not necessarily just a personality clash. We've struggled with this since 2018 when I got in Ukraine. You know, the middle management in Ukraine military is very Soviet doctrine. There's a lot of complexities involved in that, including centralized management, corruption, and you name it. And this middle management is very big. People don't want to lose their little bit of control with decentralizing. Exactly. And this is where I believe Fedorov, you know, with data and wanted to change that sort of culture has rubbed up against Sersky. And Sersky is you know, a very capable guy, as well as the new defense minister. However, the military looks at things in different ways. The military is very operational focused, and it's much like for like. So his new appointment, very capable, special forces background, Kamara. I think it's Kamara, is it? I can never say his name.
So Kamara,
he's
Kamara
got a special forces background.
Yeah, he's a long range strike expert. So the concern over the long range strike stuff is sort of been mollified, at least by the choice. So it has to be a different argument to counter. You know,
it is.
One
it's
argument.
Much the same.
One argument is that he represents the old guard of that kind of upper echelon generals who defend each other kind of vibe, whereas Fedorov kind of comes from outside of this like young energy. How we should be doing in the future. We need to fucking adapt.
You can't have the same thing running the military. You need to experience or you know, commercial and outside the private sector. Otherwise, you're not going to go with the innovations that currently is leading to successes that Ukraine is encompassing right now. And
Right.
you know, I think personally it's a dreadful decision. Not just that, cabinet reshuffles go on, and that's normal, but I honestly believe that it's a very bad decision in a way that the communication is just, you know, there's not been any communication, and that void has then left the speculation to now where you're struggling to put people into positions. Not even their first nominee could get enough votes, which is why they've had to quickly change it. The whole thing's been a bit of a debacle. And for why? You're taking out Fedorov, who's the you know, the greatest outside of the box thinker, and accomplished more in 6 months than you know, many have done in 3 years. So, you know, as one guy said to me today, one Ukrainian said to me today in Kiev, you know, it's the first time we've ever talked about victory and the ferry, you know, in 4 years, and they've just removed the ferry guy that's brought that about. You know, there's a lot of anger in Ukraine. And that's where I'm sort of putting the piece together now about that, and about Ukrainians, the way they look at Zelensky now. And this is not an isolated incident. We've had the run-ins and the skirmishes with the Polish, who are Ukraine's, you know, number one allies, essentially bordering them, allowing all the supplies to come through the country. Yet we're still, you know, having friction with Poland to the point where people are returning awards, state awards to the country. You know, we've had Nabu Sabu. This is another in a line of bad decisions.
Let me at least push back on one part, is that none of that was Zelensky's doing. In the case of the Polish thing, and there's two reasons why.
Hold on a minute. What? If you're going to name a unit, and that unit's going to upset the Polish,
I got that.
That's a fight you don't need to have right now. You could do this after the war.
There's one fact I wouldn't bring it up if there wasn't one fact that was always missing from the story. What I didn't get in the story when it first kept rolling, because of course the first thing I want to do is remind the Polish, excuse me, you're basically a step down from the Russians when it came to oppressing Ukrainians. So get a history check. But the second thing, and this is so important.
That's not my point. This is a different point.
This is my point. Just bear with me. Bear with me. The unit asked, this is very important, the unit asked to be named this. It wasn't something Zelensky says, what are we going to do today? Oh, I think we'll go do that. What actually did happen, and this is so important, a special forces unit that had accomplished things here in the modern time said, we would like to have our name done to this. And they said, yes. That's the thing they did. And then the Polish went, you can't do that. So it wasn't like it originated.
No. My argument is you could do that after the war. Was that a front you really needed to open? You should have said, hang on, guys, I'm the president. We need to delay this.
Zelensky didn't the only thing I'm agreeing with about ways to handle, but I'm saying that Zelensky didn't start it. It wasn't like someone in the... Let's push back to
he approved the naming of a regiment that would upset the Polish.
That they requested.
His decision.
Right, but they requested.
But it's his decision.
One second, I got that. But also, 90% of UPA had nothing to do with Volhynia in 1943. So there's no reason why they would have thought it. There's no reason
why. You could have argued that after the war. That's not my point. My point is, did that front need to be opened? Could you have just held off until the war had finished and then sorted it out? Could you have just done that?
I would argue that I think Ukrainians are constantly holding off their being Ukrainian for someone else all the time. You know,
there's management of that. I think there's management. You really want to, when a country is bringing in your arms and you're bordering, and all your arms is coming through that country.
Again, it's also,
I think you have to have a bit of
Poland. I understand, but even in Poland, it's not Poland that's doing it. It's a fraction in a friction of the right wing that's doing it, and the rest of them are actually, hey, excuse me, the rest of us don't agree with you on that. We've even had Polish accounts apologizing to Ukrainians. Dude, we're not worried about that with you guys. We're all cool. So
some are. Let's
take it to the Zelensky level. Let's keep it at the Zelensky level. Say those are the things that are happening with Zelensky as Zelensky is beginning to turn Trump to we're winners. You know, so
winners.
It's a
they gave back the state awards. They made a massive deal out of it.
You didn't hear me. I said all of this is happening as Trump is beginning to come to the conclusion that Ukraine is where the winners are. I'm talking about how all of it is happening at a chaos moment.
I don't believe
Trump is suddenly. You don't think that Trump is suddenly trying to say that we're winning?
I don't believe any of it. I don't believe any of it. Do you know how many times we've heard this from Trump?
No, I
Do
didn't
you
say I had
know
faith
how
in
many times
Trump.
we
Hold
heard
on.
this
You
from
and I are
Trump?
the same about. Hold on. We're talking past each other. You and I have the same faith in Trump, which is zero or minus even, right? Um, I'm saying that as all of this stuff is happening domestically, right? That Zelensky's handling the local conflict. Suddenly in D.C., they actually are having a change in narrative. I'm not saying it lasts. I'm not saying put your faith in it, but it's the only thing that shifted this last week in our favor, ironically. At the same time, the other ones are not, and I'm
I
with
believe
you.
it
Don't trust it.
if these killer sanctions come in, and maybe I'll start believing it.
Right,
If
right.
we
No, no.
we start building Patriot missiles, I'll start believing it.
Right,
If any of that comes in, I'll start
right.
believing it. But how long have we been talking about that? I don't even waste time on
Yeah. Well,
Trump's
I mean,
administration
you and I
anymore.
have the same cynicism, so I know we have the same
Yeah, yeah,
cynicism.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
remind
yeah. No,
everyone
I
Trump,
do.
like, trust him as far as you can throw him, but manipulate till you get what you want.
I do believe that we've got the initiative back, and this is a problem that's come about that
Yeah.
didn't need to come about because since we've got regained the initiative, one of the Ukrainians I spoke to today was sort of saying, the last 6 months we've been giving it to the Russians, and this,
Hmm.
like I said, the first time he's ever talked about victory and a light to the end of the tunnel. We spent
Right.
3.5, 4 years fighting with no idea of how we're going to end this, and now you strangulating Crimea, and largely a lot of that to do was with Fedorov, and we've got the
Right. Right.
initiative back. So I agree with you on that. We have got the initiative back. I believe that we should keep on top of everything. We needed to show solidarity, and we didn't. We just shot
Right.
ourselves in
Right.
the foot yet again politically, which is deeply frustrating when you've got the Ukrainian military doing some amazing stuff, making some amazing operations decisions, showing some absolute battlefield and military skill. Yet
Hmm.
politically, you've got shooting yourself in the foot every 5 minutes. With removing the very person that's
Well,
making
well,
measurable results.
let's capitalize on it that way to say those other things are sort of like you can't really control Trump as a Ukrainian. You can just try to influence. You can't really control like
Really?
German or Polish politics. You could just try to influence. And I'm very adamant that Ukrainian identity has to own itself. And if that pisses off the Poles, well, then you have to make the calculation of the metric. But that's why the Fedorov thing is so irritating. Because it's like, well, look, these things you might not really sign up for, but that you fucking just walk up and self-inflicted. Like no
Mm.
one made you do that. You just woke up and
No,
got rid of the successful
absolutely.
guy. What the fuck? I mean, these I could argue with on, but this one,
Did you
field
really need to
sembrate.
do it? No, absolutely. No, I
We'll
totally
teach
agree with
everyone
you.
some quick Ukrainian, right? No shorty, bro. Like no shorty.
You know, even our
This
disagree,
man's like, what's up with you?
even if we disagree on stuff now, that is Ukraine.
Right,
As I
right,
explained to people, it's like 500 shades of grey.
right,
It's
right.
not clear cut, and the West pigeons Ukraine into what it
Yeah,
feels it resembles in the West, and it's just not like that. It's a lot more
right.
complex than the West, and that's hopefully what me and you do. Actually, when we talk, people get to understand the differences here, even from Dnipro
Yeah,
to Kiev to Mykolaiv, the different political views, the different ranges of that, talking to people here, and everybody's got, opinions are like ourselves, everybody's got one. But
right.
generally, I think people it's quite surprising. So generally, people are quite angry at that. And I haven't seen that
Yeah,
since
yeah.
the corruption scandal of last summer. And hopefully
Wysotsky
it
in
will
particular has
be
been
fixed.
galvanizing for a while, and you know this. There are
Well,
people who will
Yermak
defend him, the
turning
people
up
who are
there.
neutral. Yeah, yeah, I saw that post, right?
Yermak turning
But
up there and is,
yeah,
in a corruption trial at the moment, just added more fuel to the fire, more speculation to the fire.
explain to our audience
What's he doing?
why is your Mac's name back in this? What happened?
Well, Yermak allegedly, according to Pravda, went to visit Sersky during the time of the Fedorov sacking, and
Yeah,
and the reshuffle. Which one of the concerns in Ukraine is that the power is being shifted to a centralized small body of people in the president's office. Now that's a
yeah,
major problem to hear. Well, as one guy said to me today, we have got rid of one czar in Maidan. Now we have another president who's suddenly now making czar-like decisions, which sits really uncomfortable with a lot of Ukrainians. And now Yermak is in a corruption trial. Whether he did it or not, I don't know. That's for the courts to decide. Allegedly, he's in a corruption trial, millions and millions of hryvnia. So for him to go and see the head of the military during a reshuffle where Fedorov is you know yourself, living in Ukraine, it's not necessarily proof. Even perception could get you in a lot of shit here. You don't need you don't need proof. So yeah, it's deeply concerning that they're just adding fuel to the fire.
Right.
Or as we say,
I learned,
throw wind on it.
Right. A lesson I learned years ago with someone that I actually still dearly care about as a friend and butted heads with 20 years ago. They were in a position of authority, and their decision making about who to appoint around them was fortifying. All of us who saw the decisions went, "Why did you take an overqualified lawyer to put as your receptionist?" A genuinely qualified super lawyer becomes a receptionist of this organization. And then this other decision and this other, and like all of it was about putting in cardinals who will watch your back. Now, I'm not a young man anymore. I have some sense of how the world works, and I thought about this with Zelensky a lot in the last 4 years. You have the most hunted man on earth, which is really sad because I could think of a lot of better targets, to be honest with you. But most hunted man on earth, and that includes foreign from Russia and Belarus, obviously, but also the bile and hatred and insult of the Trump administration and certain Europeans would cause individuals like Yermak to be the needed person in certain situations. And I hadn't thought about that as much. I had like a little bit of a gut instinct on it one level, but a Ukrainian who was defending Yermak, because I'm not really worried about being a fan of or not a fan of. That's not how I think. I just think of how the parts work, and I know my government. And she said, he has a job some people may not understand. And that was essentially, without knowing my argument, that was her argument, is that his job sometimes is to go in and do the thing that if the president did it himself, they would just sort of ignore him, even though he's got this powerful position. But if someone else goes and does it as well, it sort of bolsters it. And it's because he has to be in the embodiment of everybody, and he needs good lieutenants who are strong also. And I said, okay, I understand this argument. But as you said about what the people want is so important. The perception what the people have is important. And that's why when Ukrainska Pravda stood up behind me at the Zelensky press conference in August 2024, the question that changed the vibe of the room, that was talking about long range strikes and Biden's long range strike passage, that's it, was, are you beginning to get fortified a bit? Are you beginning to become deferential to your favorites? And people are like, but Zelensky kind of gave him the look. That's how I got a good photo out of it because I was right in front. It was like, sure, but it's at the root of a Ukrainian suspicion about politics, right? And I think our viewers abroad would really appreciate that when we have a Trump who is literally putting in judges that'll favor for him and Congress members who favor for him and television programs have to favor for him and anchors have to favor for him. And so here we're like, wait, aren't you going too far with like fortifying your complex too much, Mr. Tsar? Because here the power should come from the people.
Yeah, I think you're seeing it now. I think you'll see a readjustment with the appointment of Fedorov because the people have stood up. I think you're seeing the backlash of that now with Zelensky faffing around trying to find a spot and a position and to utilize Fedorov, which I think is needed.
Right.
But you've still got an army guy in one of the top positions who's going to just be like for like, whether he's, specialties long range. He's not going to bring that tech expertise unless he can get along with Fedorov. Is Fedorov's role just going to be fluff? Is it?
But as someone said, Fedorov may shuffle into an invented role that keeps the same resource in house. Yeah,
just to keep the populace happy.
If not, he goes to work for Palantir.
Exactly, or Europe will snap him up like anything, and then Ukraine lose again. It's like No, I honestly think there's a legitimate argument to really protest on this. I'm quite positive that he's needed. Certainly talking to several Ukrainians I've interviewed today saying exactly the same thing. They see it the same way. Certainly, this is an endemic, in-depth problem in Ukraine, which is middle management, Soviet doctrine that's made worse since the war, because all those NATO-trained soldiers and all those NATO-trained personnel who did those joint exercises are either dead, captured, instructed or injured, So, they've become very sparse, very less. So the Ukrainian army sort of moved trying to take on the technical change away from the Soviet days with modern innovation that's moving at such a speed, but still stuck in that Soviet doctrine, centralized command, because it's an easier way to bring new recruits in.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's what my question for you would be, as a man who's been a soldier in this army. And it's actually good to be in Mykolaiv saying this to you, of all places. I'm glad you said it at the beginning, because it's so true.
Home
of my 36 Marines. But if someone said, well, the problem with Sersky is he's too Soviet, what does that mean to an average viewer who has no idea what the fuck that even means? What's the difference?
It means to put it bluntly, without going into the
I mean on the battlefield now, what is the difference?
Decision comes down here. When I came in 2018, there wasn't an emphasis on NCOs, sergeants, corporals, as there was in 2022 when Russia invaded. And one of the successes we had, I put it down to in Mariupol, was the ability for soldiers to jump into other people's shoes, and that's inevitably. There's more emphasis, more responsibility be placed on British military of those lower ranks, the NCOs, than there ever was of Ukrainians. Now, just in 2022, that was starting to shift. Under Soviet doctrine, a lot of the power came from above. You didn't make a move, you got punished for, using incentive. If I was to go and change or clean my vehicle, and somebody said, well, does it need cleaning? Who told you to do it? Well, nobody told me to do it. I was thinking it just needed cleaning. That would be enough to get you punished. And that's the sort of centralized Soviet doctrine, is that you don't make a move without somebody higher up telling you can do it, or they will tell you to do it. Whereas, initiative in the British Army was sought after, especially the fact if your platoon commander or your section commander would be allowed, if your platoon commander was to take that position, your section commander, it's down to him how he's going to take it. Whereas the Soviet doctrine would be, you're going to do it this way, which is what you'll see the Russians do now. Meat, salt, going and doing flag raises, just in propaganda, flag runs just to get onto the media. What you're seeing is just the same tactics over the last 4 years, with vehicles driving closer and closer to each other in big long lines where they get hit by drones. The prime example of that now is the Southern Corridor, where you're seeing Russians get taken out, and they've been doing that for 4 months. They haven't changed anything. They just keep doing the same thing, waiting for somebody above to say, you need to stop that. And that's how the Soviet army works. Whereas in the Western military, we would find solutions and go, that's not working, let's change that, at a lower level. Soviet doctrine just doesn't do that. Imagine doing that when you, like, if you're Sersky and you're Fedorov, you're trying to change the culture of a whole military. I had my little bubble in Mykolaiv. He's got the whole ethos, the whole military, the whole culture. They were always going to clash. And they just, now it's unworkable, which is why allegedly, and that came out afterwards. That came out afterwards after the speculation.
Well, in the case of like the Russian side of the meat wave, as it gets called, is very clear. But you and I both know that there are commanders here that have been really angry with Sersky, in a similar argument, shall we say.
Well, it's called the Butcher, for one thing. He's got that name.
But see, I try to think about where those things come from, because here's one reason, and I want to say this more for our audience, but you and I should dissect this with our understanding. One of the first times I heard an insult towards Sersky was from a Westerner here, that vented what they thought they heard amongst people that they were around. And I know this person was around troops, but was still a Westerner. Um, and then similarly, the Western chatter spaces on Twitter, same thing, making critiques about someone they'd never been around, served with, didn't know about on that level. So I'm always more concerned with what soldiers who definitely know the battle and commanders who know the battle actually say before I worry about all that other chatter space on the outside because they
Yeah,
simply do not
absolutely.
understand. But domestically, it is a little bit of a split. I have had some commanders say, well, you can hate him if you want, but we're still standing. And this was from someone I know doesn't like him to be. I mean, he doesn't disrespect him, but I could tell there's not a. It's not who I want. I know he likes Illusioning. The person I'm talking about, he definitely is a Illusioning guy. But he's just said he's a very difficult situation with all these things, and for us to be unreasonable about Sersky's position was also unreasonable, if that makes sense. Meaning that I don't know what it's like to be the general in that position while I'm agreeing with these frustrated commanders. So let me, I know I put a lot on the table, but I need you, from someone who's been in that situation, to kind of like tell me how far off base that is once you start hearing that you have seasoned commanders making commentary, but also another seasoned commander said, "Yeah, but try having his chore on your desk." Um, break that apart from a soldier point of view. How does it play? Because again, a
Well, I
sergeant,
mean,
a private, all the way up to the colonels, they all
does
have
that?
different levels of
I mean,
responsibility to have opinions.
he's not taught with drones. He's had to learn on the job. He's come from an area the same as me where, when we were in the military, there wasn't even mobile phones. So, we've
Right.
all had to, let's be honest, we've all had to learn
Yeah.
this battlefield innovation. So
Right.
he still comes from a military which is still artillery, tanks, and infantry. You do need all that, but you
Sure.
also need the innovations to drone technology because it's technology that's going to win you this war. Where I think that's where he's buffering up against is that he's got one set, one playbook. He's not, let me finish here before I go into it. Because
Of
generals can
course.
make really important decisions and not necessarily decisions that are happy decisions and decisions that will actually he needs to make have to benefit the greater good. I was stuck in a 200-kilometer encirclement in Mariupol. Do you think
Right.
anybody wanted that? No. But the longer we held out, the longer we drained the Russians from coming in. May save Kiev. Where are we going to get?
Exactly. Exactly.
Where are we going to do it? I mean, somebody has to make that decision. Zelensky made that decision. Eventually, it got to the point where we had to quit and call it a day. But essentially, you know, we were in that city from the end of February until, virtually the
Right.
middle of April. So, why didn't they say end it in the middle of March when we were getting smashed? No, they didn't. They kept going to the middle
Right.
of April until we had no ammunition, no. Somebody has to make that decision, and Sersky's one of those guys.
Right.
So I'm always careful to filter out what is actually bluff, what is gaff, what is real sensible. I need to be mad at
Right.
against just ordinary soldiers chanting, moaning, and it's very difficult. And now with the advent of internet, you've got guys lecturing and commenting to this war that have never fought on the zero line, who are talking about hating Zelensky but loving the people of Ukraine and how I hate Zelensky, and they have 30,000, you've seen them, 100,000 followers, and they've never even set foot on zero line, but they're
I made a
critiquing
point
this
in my
war.
little click last. We did a little short video last night when I got into your lovely town because we had an air raid go off. So I want to make a comment in your town.
Yeah, we got one
And
now.
one of the things I
So
said, yeah. So I said that there are people who keep making comments abroad that say, "Well, none of us really know what's happened, so we all need to just support Ukraine." And these feel good to a generic Ukraine supporter abroad. But you and I both know we live here. We know commanders. We know politicians. We know journalists. We know our own families. We know a lot of things. And sometimes I told our viewers, I said, sorry, and I put this on Twitter, sorry, but sometimes you're wrong about that. Sometimes those of us live here actually kind of know what happened. And
yeah.
I'll publicly give it by answering it this way. Sean, I specifically pimped you because I'm a good digital pimp. to get an interview with Fedorov because I know people on his staff, and they're really great people. Um, he's not talking right now. He's not
No, I don't
talking.
blame him.
He's not
He
taking
can't.
any
Yeah.
exclusive interviews at all, and it's because it's a big deal that he came out and said what he said on top of this. Now, let me add a couple things to our audience understanding about Fedorov. There's a few things he did that we didn't talk about this. Types of audits to figure out where the money was going. Disclosures and open open ledger style of procurement and development. A whole range of these things that needed to happen to really modernize and protect our defense systems here. And it ruffled feathers because what it really does is it cracks down on corruption. It makes it impossible in many ways to even engage in it, especially open ledger. If I say, "Hey, I'm going to bid on um, a contract to develop drones for some unit or whatever," then how much am I offering that bid for? And it's like, well, if it's because of favoritism, which is part of corruption model, then was I able to get an extra 20,000 on top of it, 50,000? What's the number I was able to get? There's a little
Mm.
buffer that's not
Little fluff
overrun
money.
R yeah, they'll not overrun R&D, but the other stuff. And Open Ledger allows that if you, Sean, submit one that's honest, and we get someone else who submits one that's a little questionable, then we would actually know. We would know that two competent entities sharing their information, sharing their possibilities were given differential treatment. And that's the type of stuff Fedorov really did that kind of obviously pissed off a few folks. So I just wanted our viewers to understand a few of the things he did besides developing was to put in these accountability systems that ruffled some feathers.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We touched on it earlier, the corruption. We're not saying Sirski's corrupt. What we're saying is
Yeah, I'm not
that,
naming
there's
anybody.
a lot of people under him who love their little Soviet steel bubble where they could skim off the top. And we even had a
Yeah,
word for it in the in the Ukrainian military,
uh,
low-level corruption. We had it
yeah,
even
yeah,
down to
exactly.
the platoons and company commanders,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's you're bang on the money there. He's upset the people that he shouldn't upset, and that's how he's
yeah,
ended up in the situation he's in. And that's
yeah.
why Yermak's materialization to speak to Sersky
Ugh,
is even more problematic because of that. He's going for a corruption trial now. He should have been nowhere near
yeah,
anybody
exactly.
like Sersky. He should be well away from it. So yeah, that's added fuel to the fire. I don't think it's going away. They can give Fedorov whatever job
Oh,
he
it's not
wants. I
going away.
think this is going. This is not going away. This is really pissed people off.
And I would say this about the situation is that, and I said this today with our young people over at our protest, um, that the people showed up. The
Yeah.
people came out, and not just in Kiev, but across the country, Odessa, Kharkiv, here in Mykolaiv. I physically watched the events last night with you guys there in Dnipro, and no one's going to come out and protest Pete Hegseth in favor of him. We won't even know who your Ministry of Defense person is to go protest in Britain because no one's going to be bothered with that. You got a new
Mm.
government, but you see what I'm saying? Like, this is such a unique thing to show why this matters because the young people went out and said, "Our future matters, and you will listen to us." And no, we're not going to go away until you resolve our issues. And that's sort of what democracy is really about.
I do. I think the biggest issue here for me was talking to people, and I didn't realize it until today. Was talking to several people, and was that all this happened, and nobody knew what was going on. Nobody was communicated
Right.
to. There was no reason other than, and only a few days later, that Fedorov had run-ins with Sersky. So it
Right.
was just, we're sucking Fedorov. That was it. And then everybody just lost their tempers
Right.
and jumped in. And I think the community, I, I've written, I'm never against cabinet reshuffles. These things happen. It's down to the
Sure.
president. Intelligence may change it. things going on in the geopolitical spectrum may change it. You may need to change to get deals done. So I'm perfectly okay with cabinet reshuffles. I think what was just completely blew everybody out of the water that one of them was Fedorov. And I think generally the lack of
example,
communication.
to the rest of viewers, real quick, and I'm gonna hand it back to you, please, is that the prime minister being dismissed, that no one would have hit the fucking streets over her.
Sorry, I didn't hear you then. What?
I said the fact that the minister, prime minister, she was released, Yulia Sidorenko, was dismissed this week and had to go through the whole RADA development for another. Is no one hit the streets over that, right? So we didn't have a cabinet shuffle so that something would be new. This was a particular one that set the button in order. It was him that happened.
Yeah, I think that gap between when he announced, there would be a cabinet reshuffle, and to the point where Fedorov was touted that he may actually lose his job. Many people were commentating and didn't realize that when the president, the prime minister has changed, the whole cabinet has to resign. Stuff like that. People didn't realize. So you had people commentating that were just speculating the fact that Fedorov's gone, that's it, it's over. And it's, hold on a minute. Well, he could be reinstated, by Monday. The fact that he wasn't was a different argument. But, you had people commenting because they don't know the legal ramifications here. They don't know what happens in the RADA. They don't know. They just jump on X clicks. And that's the problem you've got. There's a lot of I was telling people just to wait a couple of days, wait until after the weekend, and then it's all going to come to light what's going to happen anyway. No, you had commentators, pretty well-known commentators, just stirring up shit. I love Fedorov. They've never fought in the front line, served in the military here. They don't understand what's going on in the country yet. They were, big Fedorov fans. And it's not as simple as that, as you know. It's who's going to replace Sersky, the leader of the military and fighting, there aren't many people to pick from. Who would want? I wouldn't want that job, but let's be honest anyway. But, Kamara is perfectly capable of running a special forces background, special forces unit Alpha and Omega. He should be left to run that because he's doing successfully well at that. Do I think he's a minister of defense material? Probably not. No.
I don't think that anyone will make the argument. Yeah, I don't think anyone will make the argument that someone around Zelensky or Zelensky did this because they want to lose or they want to lose the upward momentum we have. Like all those things, none of those things would make true. There has to be at the root of it here's one working theory I have, and let's let time answer this. So this is just me putting it on the table. I know people who will not work with certain people who are in conflict with each other, even though they have faith in both of them, because they want the conflict out of the way while everything else proceeds. When it changes, they will actually restore both people back in some position, but they need that shuffle because the last thing they want is a conflict, right? And it doesn't make the right decision. It's a decision they actually made. Second thing, in my youth, a lesson I learned was, so someone I was absolutely certain was going to be fired. My job was to spy on him for the regionals above us, way above him. And I went in and I had a whole long list of things that were really wrong with this dude. And I got told a lesson that I really learned that I think has more to do with leadership, regardless of how you, whatever you're serving in, where they said, do you know how much we've invested in him? I mean, he's worked with us now for 8 years at this wage and this much training. And I was like, because I was assuming the guy would just be fired. So he goes through retraining. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move him into this position because he'll actually be better at that than this one. And the more the rationale was laid out by someone who really had, hundreds of people under them to look after. And I knew this particular person would be that guy in a good way. It was a really a good understanding of how a senior leadership position can know how to sometimes move widgets around to get a better result that you and I reflexively don't understand because it's like, but you just got rid of so and so. No. I moved them from this to that position because that worked better for us. And sometimes in these positions of defending ourselves, What's popular is one thing, but what's successful looks different when you have all the pieces on the table. And only those people who have all the pieces on the table can really decide whether they made the existential reality answer that we all need. Does it protect us?
Yeah, only the people at the top will know those discrepancies between Fedorov and Sersky, and whether that was actually the case. I think there's a lot more to it, this whole picture. I'm losing you slowly because you're getting darker and darker, and now I'm seeing the taxis behind you, and eventually I'm just going to see your reflection of myself in your glasses.
Well, in that mind, actually, we're not off yet because I'm going to take you walking, so we're going to keep talking. So tell us what you did this week while I take us to a particular field trip. It's only
I've been to Portugal, oh boy.
Portugal?
No, actually, I've been to see some sponsors of Ukraine.
Buona noche, obrigado.
Obrigado. Yeah. We've just been literally.
Obrigado, irmão.
Obrigado. I don't know any more than that, actually. I just know it's a beautiful country. Went over.
I'm a big fan of Fado. And we just played Adufe, which is one of their drums. So I'm a big fan of Fado music from Portugal. But you had a retreat there? You had a retreat?
Sponsors, they bring over vehicles. They support Ukraine. I had to do a motivational talk to a workforce about, being positive in the most extreme environments, which is sort of my speciality at the moment. Talking to a workforce who are battling AI and having a competitive edge on their company, and this is something they've got to deal with. And thinking outside the box sort of speech, really about motivations in some of the darkest times, and translating that to business, which was very well received, to be honest. I got a standing ovation, and we had a couple of days off in Portugal, which was really. We took Loki, who was like I
saw Loki on the train, sprawled out.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, he was the star of the show. To be fair, we couldn't move anywhere without people stopping us. But I think we've only got a kilo left before he's not allowed to fly anymore with us on the plane because he's so big and so heavy.
Is there a size limit for a Maine Coon?
Weight limit. I think it's something like 7 or 8 kilos. So he's getting onto the border point now, and he's only 10 months old. So
at that point, he's a tiger.
Yeah, panther, I think. So he has to go in the hold, which I'm not sure he'll like that very much. So yeah, we took him, and it's a very prep-friendly country, and we went to Porto and had a look around, and then we're back home, which is it's good to be back home, to be honest. We got back yesterday, so
another feeling. We're going we'll be back in your town. We're filming here for the next 2 days. Then we're going to Dnipro back, meet up with our good brother you just did an interview with.
Yeah.
Dnipro, right? And then we're going to Sumy. Oh yeah, nice. We got a good. We just got our confirmation for our Sumy event.
You be careful. I might be going there soon as well.
Yeah, and actually, I just ran into a bunch of people who are over there fighting. Our Colombian friends are definitely over there right now. So, before I take us where I'm going, real quick, any final thoughts?
I know where you're going.
Really, you know where I'm going. Yeah, exactly.
I can see the building behind you, so I know where you are.
Yep. So. Then, and I don't want to end it. I want to flip. There we go. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here. There we go. Alley of Heroes. Those that we've lost.
Too many. Absolutely too many.
Yeah.
And still going on.
Yeah. So, friends, when we say we know what's being sacrificed, Sean's lost a lot of brothers that have done the fight. I've lost friends who've been in the fight. Sorry, didn't balance there. And we're not giving up. Ukrainians don't give up. And we know why we're fighting.
Absolutely. There's one common goal. Russia.
One common goal. The enemy will destroy us if we don't.
Yeah, I think that's really. I've got to be honest. That's what's pissed me off more than most is we're now inward looking and not forward focused on Russia where we should be. It's and
Exactly.
that's largely that's where Zelensky's at fault here. It's an absolute calamity that we're now looking in, not out, which is pretty scary when you're in a war with a country with one of the biggest, missile arsenals on the planet. So we
Well,
need to be on the game.
this is why I wanted our friends just right
Yeah,
where you had seen a sign behind me for returning our defenders. From now on, when you think of Mykolaiv, remember that this is right next to the city hall where people you saw today had gathering for voices in their democracy, where people come here to pay their respects to those
yeah,
who've been killed and sacrificed, and a reminder every day that Russia's a terrorist state.
absolutely. That's been a nice little chat, actually. You've been taking us around Mykolaiv, my old stomping ground. It's
Yeah, man.
pretty good. I'm glad you're still
Really
alive,
enjoy being
anyway.
in. Yeah, I'm working on it. Trying.
Stay with
I
it.
will
Don't do
say that
anything stupid.
also, you know, there's a lot of people who message during these attacks from abroad, and I appreciate them for me as a friend, and also for Sean as your friend. But I think Sean and I both agree the number one thing that goes through our consciousness is not ourselves. It's
Yeah,
what it does to the people around us, the stress of the people around us, and I had a person who, when I talked about the missiles coming in, made a comment that, yeah, but you're safe where you're at, and it's just sort of like it really hit a button with me. It just put me in the fucking red zone. Like, is it always about me? Like, man, I don't even think about me. I think I'm here in Kiev, and they launched 41 fucking missiles at my city in Kiev,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I have
yeah, yeah.
so many people, including my mom, that have to go through this stress. But when I saw the impact on Lukyanivska again, an entire
Again,
section of a fucking metro opening, blasted in the fucking hole, yes, I have palpable fucking anger stress. It's not about whether
yes,
I'm safe in a bunker. It's about whether the people I love are going to be killed, stressed, demoralized, and brought, through that phase. So yeah, uh, it's weird that I had to remind it, but yes, I'm always thinking about really what it does to the other folks, including you,
absolutely.
bro, because you live in
And
Dnipro.
you?
So when I know that you live in Dnipro and I see the alarm go off, I'm like, is Sean sleeping through it? Of course he is. Yeah, but still, am I stressed because he's sleeping through it? Yeah, of course.
I wake up. The only reason I answer you is because you go, "Are you sleeping?" And I have to put yes because I don't want you thinking anything's happened to me. So I go, "Yes, I'm sleeping." And it's like, how can you be sleeping if you put yes? Yes, I'm
Right,
sleeping.
right, right, right. No, I
Yeah,
get
no,
I
no,
got messages today that said, hey, are you okay and in shelter? Like, I'm in Dnipro, but it actually, which park I was in. Remember, I sent you a picture of. So, um, we were actually in a hotel that's my room is essentially about a layer and a half deep underground, and I really was hating it. I'm a 24th floor balcony eagle hawk guy. Like I want to see all of it. Not like I'm in the bottom. There's no Wi-Fi. Is it all dead? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea what was happening. I have no idea what's happening here. I have no idea what's happening
It's
in
been
Kiev.
quiet here, to be honest.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah,
shit's
good.
going Kiev, so
Oh,
it's
but
it's
they
been
did hit a
quite quiet
World
where I
Food
am.
Kitchen warehouse in Dnipro 2 days ago. So if you get a chance, maybe see if you can find some leads on that.
I haven't
Over.
heard it. I haven't seen it. I was traveling probably
You were
then, actually.
traveling.
I've not seen
Yeah.
coming
My
back in.
man.
To be honest, that's worth. We
Yeah.
got stopped on the way in, so on the way out, and twice drones flying over the train. So we have to get out and debus. And I wrote a story about it while I was sitting on the
Yeah,
edge of the
amen.
train in the woods. I just wrote a piece about being on the tracks through the Kiev bombings. But yeah, I mean, it's therapy's. My writing's therapy now for me. To be fair, I do a lot of it, too much of it.
Yes.
Yes, yes,
It's how I pour out my anger and hate. Sean,
it is.
I want to tell everyone, please subscribe to his account if you are not already, including paid subscriptions. And thank you for being my sounding board with my rage, anger, frustration, hate, and horrible thoughts.
I hope people can put up with our disagreements sometimes, but that's what makes it
I think our
interesting.
disagreements are good in the sense that we're both super sincere and we don't insult each other.
Fuck you.
I love you, bro.
Love you, bro.
I'll say this. There's a lot of things we do here that are very unique. I had a good friend of mine who is very angry at press right now. And she caught what we're doing, a Ukrainian friend. And she said, we need more people watching you guys because she had watched this CNN thing. I want to say it had been CNN. And she just said it just feels impersonal. Like they don't know what we live through. They
No,
don't really relate to us. They don't try to figure us
don't
out.
get me started on this again. I'm
Yeah.
sick of seeing people with
So
150,000 followers
ugh.
talking and commenting about Ukraine that just don't know what they're talking about. It just
Well, actually,
honestly.
That was my post earlier. Is that if I'm offering a unique perspective to someone who does not understand Ukraine, and then they just blow it off, I'm basically going to take the resources away from that person permanently. Because I
I
have
think they should
invested
shut
my
down
understanding.
anybody that has the byline, the header. Russia's going to collapse. Economy's going to collapse next week. I literally for 4 years we've been
Oh my
hearing the
God, the
same fucking
competition would at
thing.
least go away. Like 60% of the people who
If I
post would
don't
have to
turn on
stop
my
posting.
X and see it within the first few on my feed going, the
Right,
economy's going to collapse next week. I mean, I post it sometimes. I think
right,
that's pretty good. And then it's still there. I just same
right.
shit every. You imagine if
One
Ukraine
more
just
thing on
based their whole security on that.
one more thing about algorithm, and I'm glad Sean's are doing pretty well. When we finish this interview, we post these to YouTube. Several of these videos
Oh
do pretty
yeah,
well on
good point.
Substack, but they literally die on the long
Die.
form on YouTube. The shorts are okay, but I did one with Larry the sociologist the other night with Frank Figluzzi, one's with you. That a week and a half later, the one with you is 4 views. Now, friends, dear friends, the way to kick the algorithm into gear a little bit is to go over there, and when you know we've been live, look on that account, take it and post it to like your Facebook or something else. Please, it's a
Podcasts do
request.
really well. Our
Right.
chats do really well now.
Yeah, and the more we try to push it together, here's why. Because I think I can speak with Sean on this, or on behalf of us for you guys, is that we're not worried about us, but we need this megaphone to grow so that we can help people in front of us. And the second part, and Sean, let me break this news to you. You and I were at the Made in Russia torture event at the museum with a lot of it had the ombudsman, we had leaders of the different communities, like as the Free Azo community. And now I'm cooperating with them to film specific interviews. We already have our new soldiers who will line up to give testimony on camera, on film, to deliver to the world. And they trust people like you and me almost nearly exclusively because not only do we show up, that's just showing up. We demonstrate we're trying to figure out what the fucking solutions will be, what the next steps will be. You have a vested interest from your experience. I have 3.5 years invested of just doing it because I'm crazy and it's a good thing. And the people who are helping us by being paid subscribers and a little bit of that behind the scenes, you're making that bridge happen for those particular groups and people. And without you doing that, we'd be doing it, but it'd be a lot harder, and we wouldn't have a team thing to do. We can't like hire an extra Ukrainian friend to like a week from now, I will get to interview a wonderful former POW and also Luhansk partisan expert. But we're going to have a Ukrainian friend who's going to be just helping us and a little extra money in their pocket because some people have been a little kind with PayPal enough that I can probably hand them about $100 for a day's work. And the more you do that, the more we can do it. But Sean, you and I know, even if they didn't, it's our catharsis therapy. We would be crazy right now if we
I
did not
would
have
be.
this way to express our frustrations.
Absolutely. I got just a little chat, and then we got 74 people on tonight, and probably another couple of
Ta-da!
thousand over the next week. So, what started out as a little chat when we first started at 30
That's correct.
people is now, tripled in size. That's a
That's
good
right.
point to end on.
And again, just as a reminder why we do this, as we leave to say goodbye tonight, these
Because these can't do it.
these soldiers gave their lives for the freedom of the people around us. So the least we can do is we keep standing up for the freedom they died for,
Mm.
so that these faces actually mean something. so that these
they can't
lies.
say anything.
And I can say, look, we'll do it this way. Hold on. Let me pull in the stand a little bit better. Born 1990, born 2003, 1984, 1970, 1992. You know, these are young people, older people. 1990, you know, 1997. There's a Marine. There's another one of our Marines. 36th Marine right here. Or 1997. Fuck me, man. You know, born in the year 2000.
Yeah.
So
if we don't write about it, who's gonna write about them? You
that's right. So we don't forget things. This is the most important part of what the work Sean and I will ultimately do. Is that we don't forget these guys. Sean served with them, and I stand with their families and with them. You know, Sean, I told you, it's something that's motzi, as we say, when these defenders come out of captivity and suddenly find my message on Instagram, and they're like, "You looked after, my family when I was in captivity," and
Warrior
I don't know what to
Riches.
say.
Yeah,
there we go.
I listened to that today.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you so much. See you guys soon. Sean, brother, welcome back to your home in Ukraine, and we'll see you shortly.
Pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting. Slava Ukraine.
Героям слава і пиздець Російській Федерації.